This is a presentation about the idea of diminishing marginal utility. Marginal in economics means extra, and utility means satisfaction. So, with this phrase, diminishing marginal utility, diminishing means falling, we are talking about what happens to our satisfaction when we consume extra units of a product. And we believe that our satisfaction keeps falling. So let's look at what this means in practice. We are saying that as we consume more of any product, as the quantity consumed goes up, each extra unit that we consume gives us less extra pleasure than the last one. So let's see how we can illustrate this using a familiar product, ice cream. If I buy an ice cream, then I get some pleasure from the first ice cream that I eat. But the second one may give me slightly less pleasure. The third one may give me less pleasure than the second. And by the time I have my fourth ice cream, it may not give me much pleasure at all. In fact, it may make me feel a little bit sick. So, this is the idea of diminishing marginal utility. As we consume more of a product, each extra unit that we consume gives us less extra pleasure than the last unit. So the first ice cream gives us a lot more pleasure than the fourth. So, what can we do with this idea of diminishing marginal utility? Well, if we look at one individual person, one individual consumer, and we look at their marginal utility for a product such as ice cream, we can see that as they increase their consumption of ice cream, their marginal utility will fall. So the first ice cream they consume may give them quite a lot of pleasure. The second one will give them less. The third one will give them less. The fourth one, even less. So this is their marginal utility curve measured against the quantity that they are consuming. And we say that according to the theory of diminishing marginal utility, the more you consume, the less extra pleasure you get from each one that you consume. So, now let's look at what we have to give up to consume something. We have to pay for the good that we are consuming, and we pay the price. So the price is the money we must give up in order to consume. What does this tell us about consumer behavior? Well, imagine we're paying a price in pounds, which is a certain amount, let's say P0, and P0 is here. As long as the pleasure we get is greater than the price we pay, we will continue to consume the product. So the first, second, third, and fourth units of this product give us more extra pleasure than the money we have to give up. So does the fifth. But by the time we get to the sixth unit, the money we give up is exactly equal to the pleasure we get. We will stop consuming here at 6 units. Because if we consume any more, we actually get less pleasure than the money we have to sacrifice. So, this theory says that the individual's marginal utility curve is downward sloping, and that the individual will stop consuming where the price equals the marginal utility of the last unit they consume. We can go from this to what we call a market demand curve. So, if we imagine that there are now 2 consumers, 1 and 2, each one has their own marginal utility curve. If the price of the good is P0, the first person will stop consuming at X0, and the second person will stop consuming at X1. So if we were somehow to add these two marginal utility curves together, we would get the market demand curve shown here, where it shows us that at this price, the two consumers together, this one and this one, would buy a total amount of x0 plus x1. So the market demand curve is just the sum of the individual demand curves or marginal utility curves of all the consumers in the market. In this case, we have assumed that there are only two, but it illustrates the principle that the market demand curve is just the sum of the marginal utility curves of all the consumers in the market.